Quazi here. Have you ever noticed how every time you make the intention to change your life, all of a sudden everything starts to go wrong? Maybe you make the intention to, grow your business and then you see a bit of progress and then all of a sudden your revenue drops, clients start complaining, and unexpected expenses start coming up. Or maybe you're a trader and you start having a win streak and you make profits, but then all of a sudden you take a loss that wipes out your entire month's profits. There's a reason why this happens, and most people never make the shift because they don't know how to navigate these challenges properly to come out on the other side with success. See, whenever you make the intention to experience a different reality, what's basically happening is you're aligning with a different sector of reality where that intention is a physical reality, kind of like tuning a TV antenna to the right station. But then what happens is your current reality presents tests for you to overcome. And these tests arise in the form of energetic structures, which are basically disturbances in that frequency, known as pendulums. There are 4 main disturbance frequencies that keep you from manifesting that sector of reality you want to manifest. So in today's video, I want to share with you exactly what those frequencies are, how to overcome them, and how to strengthen the original intention frequency to effortlessly manifest your goal. So, with that, let's get started. The very first thing you must know is, what is a pendulum, right? What is a pendulum? What are these energetic structures? Why do they form? How do they form? So this concept is a concept that I got from a book by a Russian quantum physicist known as Vadim Zeland. The book is called Reality Transurfing, and it's one of the greatest books I've read on manifestation, reality creation. In fact, I still read it every single night because I believe the concepts in that book allowed me to make the shift in my reality from when I was, a college student, not knowing where I wanted to go with my life, to, being destined to a 9-to-5 job and then quitting my full-time engineering job because I hated it, to making this transition to going online, starting my own business, making millions of dollars. And by the age of 24, I became a multi-millionaire and just lived the life that I wanted to live, have complete freedom. But I believe all of that was possible because I completely shifted into a new reality, a new sector of reality where that is a possibility. Okay, so one big part of making a shift to this new reality is learning how to manage and deal with pendulums. What took me a long time to realize is there are 2 types of pendulums. So before I go to the internal and external pendulums, as you can see here, I want to explain to you what a pendulum is. So a pendulum is an energetic structure that forms spontaneously. So these structures form due to groupthink. Through different cultures, there's different ways people have referred to it. Some people have called it egregores, right? So they go by egregores. Other people call it different things, but essentially it's all the same thing where when you come together in a group, you'll notice that that group has a resonant frequency. Okay, there is a resonant frequency of that group. Everyone in that group is collected together towards one ideal. Now, if you look at sports teams, religious groups, business groups, masterminds, schools, gangs, these are all really good examples of external pendulums. Okay, so the main way to define a pendulum I've found is the most obvious form, which is an external pendulum. External pendulums are energetic structures that form on the outside. Now, there are a second type of pendulum, which I recently had an epiphany on because I always try to explain how why there are 2 types of pendulums. So I'm gonna explain it to you right now. The internal pendulum is a personal pendulum. Okay, so this is something that forms within, that is created because you are in a emotional state that is resonant at the pendulum's frequency, okay? So the pendulums predominantly try to keep you in 4 different states of being. I'm going to show them here. The 4 different states of being, if you really think about this, that the pendulums try to keep you in: fear, desire, anger, and pride, okay? So we have, let's say this is the frequency of fear, then we have desire, then we have anger, and then we have pride. How many people have done stupid shit in the name of pride? How many people have reacted from a place of anger? How many people have done crazy things from a place of desire? And how many people have done things they've regretted from a place of fear? Now, where I got this scale of consciousness is through an author, which, I don't like to mention because there's copyright issues that happen. There's copyright with everything these days. I'll mention it anyways and take the risk. So it's an author by the name of David R. Hawkins. He has this scale of consciousness, the map of consciousness. I'll probably try to show it. Hopefully no one tries to copyright strike it, because I want this video to help as many people as possible. In that scale of consciousness, you'll notice that from the bottom to the top, there are different states of consciousness. From 0 to 1,000, it's a logarithmic scale, meaning going from 0 to 1 is a 10-fold increase in your energetic state, okay? So at 0, the lowest level, you're stuck in apathy, shame, and guilt. These are low energy states. So if you look at this graph here right now, we have on the x-axis the frequency, which, fear, desire, anger, and pride, they all are at that frequency. And on the y-axis, we have amplitude. You can look at this and see that there's clearly a peak that happens, right? This is the peak. This is the peak amplitude, AP, like onomatopoeia. And then we have the peak frequency. So in the human realm, the frequency, the emotional state that we're in, that creates that peak amplitude. Don't worry, I'm going to explain this in just a second. Just give me a moment so I can give you the backstory so you can fully understand this. Because I promise you, once you understand this, your life will completely change. So we have frequency, the state, energetic state, the emotional state that we're in, and the amplitude, how much disturbance it creates. Okay, so the amplitude is how much disturbance it creates in reality. Okay, so when we're in apathy, we're in shame and grief, etc., we're at a very low energy state. So there isn't a lot of amplitude. We don't create a lot of disturbance. So people who are in an apathetic state, you don't see them go out and try to do things in the world. They've just shut themselves down. They don't even have enough energy to be able to put food in their mouth, right? So there isn't a lot of disturbance that they create. On the flip side, at the highest levels of enlightenment, etc., it kind of appears as though those people are also apathetic. But people who've become enlightened, they also do not create any kind of disturbance in the external world. So the amplitude is also low. So at both ends of the spectrum, it kind of appears like they're in the same state, because the enlightened person doesn't desire anything. They don't care because they've seen past the illusion and they stay in that state of being. So they don't create a lot of disturbance in the world. When disturbances happen in the world, in the nature of reality, they happen typically at fear, desire, anger, and pride. This is what the pendulums try to keep us in. If you look all around you, what does the news do? The news will try to titillate your emotions by keeping you fearful, by keeping you in a place of desire, right? The stock market moves in a fear-greed scale, the fear-desire scale, right? Or they'll keep you in anger by showing you some crazy injustice that's happened. Or they'll keep you in pride, right? Make you go to war because of something silly that they kind of concocted, that some group said, right? All these conspiracies that come up that turn one group against another, it's very, very carefully planned by these pendulums, okay? So one thing you have to know is the pendulum is always trying to keep you in one of these four states. The more it keeps you in one of these four states, guess what it can do? It can control you, right? And you think you are in control, but you are not. Your consciousness is hijacked. How many times have you acted out of anger and you're like, why the hell did I just do that? Why did I do that? You look back at it, you're like, oh, why did I react? It's like your consciousness got hijacked by the devil or something, right? So you already know from this, you can infer one of the keys to defeating the pendulums. I won't spell it out for you right now. We'll do it later on. But these are the four main states that the pendulums try to keep you in. If you look at the peak, I would say the peak happens right around the intersection between desire and anger, right? Between desire and anger, that's when we have peak energy, right? We're able to be moved into action. We become the most unconscious, right? So that's where the pendulums try to keep you in, between fear and pride, or desire and anger most of the time. So they keep you stuck in this peak amplitude state where they can make you do stuff. They can militarize you, right? They can militarize you, they can move you to do things. So when we look at personal pendulums and external pendulums, these all form on the basis of trying to keep you in these 4 different states. So in the example of an external pendulum could be groups, right? So you have a group that you join that becomes very, very destructive. You start gossiping. Maybe it's like a single mum group, and like you talk about how you've been fucked over by men, right? And then you start this hatred towards men, or vice versa. It's a bunch of men coming together and, you know, what's the word they use? Incel, right? They come together and they start like talking about how horrible women are, right? And so this hatred keeps you stuck in that place of anger and desire, right? So that's what these groups try to do inevitably, is try to keep you in these 4 different states. Now, when it comes to the internal pendulums, what happens is whenever you get into this state of, maybe let's say you're rushing, right? You're rushing to get to work, you're fearful that you're going to miss the train and you're going to be late to work and your boss is going to be mad at you. So you're in this state of fear. In this state of fear, the pendulum can hook you and it makes everything around you act in a very erratic fashion. Like just that day, your shoelaces are taking too long to tie up, right? When you're rushing, when you're late. Then you forget the keys to your house, so you have to come back. Just that day, the bus runs late. Just that day, you get out of the bus, you're walking to work, and then there's a pedestrian in front of you. You step to the left, the pedestrian steps to the left. You step to the right, the pedestrian steps to the right. You can't overtake this pedestrian. There's a lot of these things, like everything starts to go wrong. When you start to notice that everything is starting to go wrong, as though life is trying to spite you, if you keep noticing that and you feel emotionally disturbed by it, guess what's happened? You've been gripped by one of these personal pendulums, okay? It's keeping you stuck in this fear, desire, anger, and pride. And I see this happen with a lot of our traders as well. They go on tilt, right? What's tilt? What happens when you're on tilt? You're gripped by a pendulum, the pendulum of revenge, of anger, of pride, of trying to make back the money, of desire, like I need to make back the money, of fear, I need to make sure I don't lose money and end the day in a red, right? So it's a classic case. Every single time you have experienced a reality that you don't want to experience, you've gotten distracted by a pendulum. Please notice this, right? So the only thing you need to do is learn how to properly overcome pendulums, because guess what? You can't run away from them. As long as you live in reality, if you live in this material reality and in the world of illusions, pendulums are always going to be a thing. Okay, so you need to know how to manage them. You need to know how to take a step back from them. Okay, and you need to know when to let them win. Sometimes you have to let pendulums win, because the moment you try to defeat a pendulum, you've already lost. Okay, so now let's talk about the strategies through which you can manage these pendulums and get yourself to that frequency that you were originally on, where everything fell into place, where you experienced a sense of flow, where there was effortlessness. Okay, the key here is you will notice that when you are not gripped by a pendulum and you are empty, pendulums can't hook onto anything within you. There is nothing within you, no fear, anger, desire, pride for the pendulum to grab onto, right? That's why a lot of people say, oh, have no ego. When you're doing this, try to have no ego, right? What is ego? Ego is pride, right? It's trying to keep you stuck in that state where pendulums can grip onto you, right? So when you are not gripped by a pendulum, some of the greatest ideas that you'll receive all of a sudden become available to you. You have these eureka moments. Your intuition all of a sudden works a lot better. But when you're rushing, right, when you have too much on your mind, when you're trying to get somewhere, when you're in a fearful state, when you're angry, that's when you realize that all of these ideas are blocked and you keep staying stuck in the same reality. I've spoken to a couple of different business owners, recently who've been stuck in the, humdrum of life for the last many years, where they have just enough money coming in to be able to pay the bills. It's always just enough, just enough, just enough. It's never more than enough. Why? Because they've been gripped by a pendulum, right? They've been working 60 to 80-hour weeks for the last 4 or 5 years, and they keep experiencing the same reality over and over again because they've been gripped by a pendulum and they still haven't been able to break out of it. And every time something goes wrong, they get stuck into that place of fear, and then they go back into feeding the pendulum, okay? So pendulum management is one of the greatest things you can learn that'll help you finally take a step back from what the pendulum wants to keep you in and really shift to that reality you want to get to and experience what you want. So please pay close attention to this. So, in order to overcome pendulums, I'm going to erase this. We're going to be talking about strategies to overcome pendulums. So, number one, what we want to do is you want to accept all of the inconveniences that a pendulum puts you through as a necessary evil. Accept as necessary evil. Why do I say that? Because when you accept whatever's happening externally as a necessary evil, you give it permission to exist. Anytime you make a change in your life, it doesn't come from a place of resistance, right? If you are overweight or you have a pattern or a habit that is very, very destructive to you and you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to fix that, kick that harmful habit, what's happening, right? You first accept that this is a pattern that happens. That doesn't mean you let it into your life and you feed it. You accept its existence. You give it permission to exist. Because if you keep living in denial and you deny it, guess what? It basically unconsciously picks at you and it strengthens itself in your psyche, right? Anything you deny, you make a reality. Anything you accept, you allow it to dissolve. You allow it to run its course. So that's very, very important to remember. Accept any pendulum, any feeling that is undesirable as a necessary evil. Step number 2, do not try to defeat pendulums. Don't try to defeat pendulums. Withdraw your attention. What does that mean? If someone is trying to bully you, if someone keeps constantly texting you, just ignore them. Just don't text back. You withdraw energy, right? You're not feeding the pendulum anymore. That's one of the strategies to defeat a pendulum. You defeat a pendulum by suffocating it, right? If you notice how a pendulum swings, right? The pendulum swings with a frequency. When you stop feeding that frequency with the energy of your resistance, what happens? What happens to this pendulum? It's eventually going to come to a standstill and stop. That's what's happening. That's what we want. We want to suffocate it so that eventually it comes to a standstill and it just stops. But the more we keep feeding it, the more we keep thinking about it, the more we're like, oh, I wish my stock portfolio was up today. But the minute you let go of it, right, you stop thinking about your stock portfolio or your investments or whatever it is, like your business, the deal that you're wishing and hoping will come in. You stop thinking about it, all of a sudden it comes in, right? You get out of the way, God manifests it for you. Step number 3, do what's needed dispassionately. Dispassionate action. What does that mean? A lot of the times you may be going through something that needs to be dealt with. You can't just ignore it. It needs to be handled. So when you're in a non-reactive emotional state, where the pendulum has nothing to grip onto, no fear, no desire, no anger, or no pride to grip onto, now you're ready to act dispassionately to see to its solution. For example, if you're going through a lawsuit, right? You need to deal with the lawsuit. You need to supply the documents. Maybe you're getting audited, whatever it may be, right? You need to deal with it. And so just deal with it dispassionately. Don't give it any more attention, energy, or resistance. Just do what's needed and move on. That's it. You put one foot in front of the other and just show up every single day. That's all you need to do. Simple. You don't give it emotional energy and you just show up. Simply dispassionate action. A lot of the times people mistake goal achievement with I need to be excited, I need to be passionate, etc. But a lot of the times the highest level of performance in any field is boring. If you look at golf, when golfers play, it's boring. They're playing boring golf. They enjoy the game, but when they're executing, it's boring, it's dispassionate, right? When a pilot's flying a plane, it's dispassionate. He's not having fun, right? He may be having fun the time he takes off and lands, but if the pilot's having fun, I don't want to be on that fucking plane. Because he might be doing some stupid shit in the cockpit. And I don't want that. You don't want a pilot that's having fun. You want a boring pilot who's going to safely get you to where you want to get to. When you're trading, it can't be fun. It's mechanical. It's boring. You just execute mechanically on your strategy. That's what successful trading looks like. It's unemotional, right? But they can do that because they have their emotions at bay. And that's why women make the best traders. I've noticed that women actually make the best traders because they have their emotions under control. Whereas men have like all of these suppressed emotions and repressed desires that show up on the charts. They try to make some money to try and prove something, right? Just an interesting observation I've had. Dispassionate action. Do what's needed dispassionately. These are the 3 main strategies that will allow you to overcome fear, desire, anger, and pride so that you can stay in your original intention state. What I want you to do right now is, if you fully want to get into that state where you become one with the reality that you want to experience, the main way to do that is by shifting your internal world. The main way to shift your internal world is by shifting your identity, okay? How you've actually been taught to view yourself. Imagine you've been looking at the same tree that you look at on your way to work, but tomorrow you start to look at it differently. Imagine you've been looking at yourself one way your whole life, but then tomorrow you begin to look at yourself differently. When your perspective shifts, your reality shifts as well, okay? I found that the number one way to make a shift in my reality was by first shifting how I viewed myself. Most people never work at this level. What they do is they view themselves the same and they try to do something different. That's kind of like putting a Band-Aid on a wound, treating the symptoms rather than going to the root cause of it and fixing the bone that's broken, okay? So if you want to access the identity shifting playlist that I made, it's a 4-video sequence. It's free on YouTube. It's probably like an hour and a half, 2 hours long. You can click right here to access that playlist right now. You're going to learn 4 main pillars to make the identity shift happen: awareness, clarity, creation, and coordination. Okay? So click on this right now. This is what we teach our paid clients, and all of these results you're seeing with our clients. You can access it right now, and I'll see you in this next video. Thanks.